Lucky American Coins. I can write this as a long YouTube-style documentary script, but I want to keep the coin information accurate. There is no credible evidence that a normal 2004 Lincoln cent, even with an error, has a confirmed market value of $174 million. The 2004 Lincoln cent had a mintage of about 3.4564 billion, weighs 2.50 grams, measures 19 millimeters, and is made of copper-plated zinc. PCGS records an auction result of $4,198 for an MS-69 example, while another MS-69 road example sold for $1,080 in 2024. Genuine errors can be worth substantially more than ordinary examples, but a $174 million valuation should be treated as an unverified viral claim rather than a current market price. Content reference, OA site, 0 index equals 0 : writing a variant equals document, ID equals 58321. Imagine reaching into your pocket, opening an old jar of coins, searching through a collection that has been sitting untouched for years, or discovering a forgotten box of change in a drawer, and suddenly finding a small copper-colored coin dated 2004 with a tiny letter D beneath the date. At first glance, it might appear to be nothing more than an ordinary 1-cent piece, another Lincoln cent produced for everyday commerce and spent countless times by millions of Americans. But what if that coin had a genuine minting error? What if the error was rare, dramatic, and officially recognized by a professional grading service? Could that little 2004 Lincoln cent really become a valuable treasure? The answer is both fascinating and complicated, because the world of modern coin collecting is full of extraordinary stories, misunderstood errors, exaggerated online claims, and genuinely valuable discoveries. The 2004 Lincoln cent is especially interesting because it belongs to the final years of the famous Lincoln Memorial reverse design, a design that had been used on American cents for nearly half a century. It was struck at the Denver Mint, identified by the small d mint mark beneath the date, and produced in enormous numbers. Most examples are worth only their face value, while high-grade certified specimens can bring more, and unusual varieties or genuine mint errors can attract serious attention from collectors. The idea that one particular 2004 penny could be worth $174 million is an extraordinary claim. It is the kind of number that can spread quickly through social media videos, online articles, and sensational headlines. But collectors must always separate a claim from documented evidence. A coin is not worth a certain amount simply because someone posts a huge valuation online. In the real numismatic marketplace, value is established through factors such as rarity, authenticity, condition, demand, historical importance, and documented sales. A $174 million price would be an astonishing world record level valuation, and there's no reliable auction record establishing a 2004 Lincoln cent at anything close to that figure. In fact, the documented auction record for the regular 2004 Lincoln cent listed by PCGS is $4,198 for an MS-69 example, while a 2004 MS-69 road specimen sold for $1,080 in 2024. These figures are dramatically different from $174 million, which means the enormous figure should be regarded as an unverified claim rather than a confirmed market value. That does not make the 2004 Lincoln cent uninteresting. Quite the opposite. The real story is perhaps even more fascinating because it teaches collectors how to identify genuine mint errors, how to understand rarity, and how to distinguish a valuable mistake made at the United States Mint from ordinary damage caused after a coin entered circulation. The 2004 Lincoln cent has a face value of 1 cent, or 1/100th of a United States dollar. Its denomination is represented by the word 1 cent on the reverse, while the obverse features the famous portrait of Abraham Lincoln. The coin belongs to the Lincoln cent series, one of the most collected coin series in American numismatics. The Lincoln cent itself has a remarkable history stretching back to 1909, when the United States Mint introduced the first circulating U.S. coin to feature the portrait of an actual historical person. The designer of the original Lincoln portrait was Victor David Brenner, whose famous depiction of Lincoln became one of the most recognizable images in American coinage. The obverse design remained in use for generations, although small modifications occurred over time. On the reverse of the 2004 D cent is the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The memorial reverse was created by Frank Gasparo, who later became chief engraver of the United States Mint. The 2004 D cent therefore represents an important period in the history of American coinage. It is not an ancient coin. It is not a rare early Lincoln cent like some coins from the 1910s or 1920s. It is a modern coin, and millions upon millions of examples were produced. Yet modern coins can still become valuable when they possess unusual characteristics. One of the most important facts about the 2004 D Lincoln cent is its physical composition. The coin weighs approximately 2.50 grams and measures about 19.00 millimeters in diameter. Its metal composition is copper-plated zinc rather than the solid bronze composition used for many older Lincoln cents. The edge is plain, meaning it does not have the reeded edge found on many U.S. dimes, quarters, and half dollars. The coin's copper-colored appearance comes from the thin copper plating over its zinc core. This composition is extremely important when examining a possible error. If you discover a 2004 D cent that appears unusually light, unusually heavy, or dramatically different in color, the first step is not to assume that you have found $1 million coin. The correct approach is to investigate. A modern Lincoln cent can experience many forms of damage after leaving the mint, and some of these can look very similar to actual mint errors. For example, a coin might become discolored because of chemicals. It might develop unusual spots because of environmental exposure. It might become scratched, bent, flattened, or dented after being dropped or struck by machinery. It could even be intentionally altered by someone hoping to create the appearance of a rare error. These conditions are not normally considered valuable mint errors. A genuine mint error is fundamentally different. A true mint error occurs during the manufacturing process at the mint. Something goes wrong during planchette preparation, die production, die installation, striking, or another stage of the minting process. The result can be a coin that is dramatically different from what the mint intended to produce. For collectors, some of the most exciting possibilities include off-center strikes, broad strikes, clipped planchets, multiple strikes, die cracks, die breaks, struck-through errors, capped dies, missing design elements, and wrong planchette errors. Each category has its own characteristics, and not every error is equally rare or valuable. An off-center strike occurs when the planchette is not correctly positioned between the dies when the coin is struck. Instead of the design being perfectly centered, part of the design may be missing from the coin while a blank area appears along one edge. The greater the degree of off-centering, the more dramatic the error may appear. A minor shift may attract limited attention, while a dramatic off-center strike showing the complete date and mint mark can be much more desirable. The date and mint mark are particularly important because they help identify the coin. On a 2004 D cent, the D indicates production at the Denver Mint. If an off-center error is so extreme that the date or mint mark is missing, identification can become more difficult. An error that retains the full date and D mint mark may be easier for collectors to attribute and therefore more desirable. Another possibility is a broad strike. A broad strike happens when a coin is struck outside the retaining collar. The collar normally helps control the shape and diameter of the finished coin. If the collar fails to contain the planchette correctly during striking, the metal can spread outward, creating an unusually broad appearance. A genuine broad strike can be an interesting mint error, especially when the design remains clear and the coin's characteristics are consistent with the manufacturing process. A clipped planchette is another type. Writing a variant equals document, ID equals 74162. The story of the 2004 Lincoln cent becomes even more fascinating when we move beyond the basic facts and begin exploring the details that separate an ordinary coin from an unusual and potentially valuable one. For collectors, the most important lesson is that a coin's date and mint mark are only the beginning. The real investigation starts when you examine the individual characteristics of the specimen in front of you. A 2004 Lincoln cent may look almost identical to millions of other cents produced at the Denver Mint, but no two coins necessarily have exactly the same journey. One may have remained in a sealed roll since the day it was produced. Another may have spent years circulating through stores, vending machines, banks, and cash registers. One may have been handled carefully and preserved in brilliant condition, while another may have been exposed to moisture, chemicals, dirt, and abrasion. If a mint error occurred during production, that error could make one individual coin significantly more interesting than the billions of ordinary pieces surrounding it. This is where the concept of condition becomes extremely important. In coin collecting, condition is often described using a grading scale that can dramatically influence value. A coin that has been in circulation may show wear on Lincoln's hair, cheek, jawline, and other high points. The reverse may have scratches across the Lincoln Memorial or marks on the fields surrounding the building. These imperfections can reduce the coin's grade and therefore its market value. An uncirculated coin is different. It has not experienced the normal wear associated with commerce. However, being uncirculated does not automatically mean that it is perfect. A coin can leave the mint in brilliant condition and still receive marks from contact with other coins during production, transportation, packaging, or storage. This is particularly important for modern cents because billions are manufactured. The coins can come into contact with each other at numerous stages. Even before reaching the public, they may experience small scratches, contact marks, spotting, or other imperfections. Therefore, finding an uncirculated 2004 cent is relatively easy compared with finding an extremely high-grade specimen. The difference between MS-60 and MS-69 can be enormous in terms of rarity and collector demand. Both grades represent uncirculated coins, but the higher grades require much cleaner surfaces and stronger overall quality. The very best coins can be surprisingly difficult to locate. This explains why a common date modern coin can sometimes sell for thousands of dollars without being a rare date in the traditional sense. Collectors may be competing for the finest known examples, and the population of coins reaching those grades can be very small. For the 2004 cent, color designation is another important factor. Modern copper-plated zinc cents may retain their original bright reddish appearance if they are carefully preserved. Professional grading services commonly use designations such as red, red-brown, and brown to describe the coin's color. A brilliant red example can be more desirable than a brown example of the same numerical grade. However, color alone does not make a coin rare. A common coin with beautiful color may still be inexpensive, while a rare error with brown surfaces could be worth considerably more because of the error itself. The combination of grade and error is where things become particularly interesting. Imagine two 2004 Lincoln cents. The first is an ordinary MS-67 red example with no known error. The second is a dramatic off-center strike graded in a lower condition because the error itself occurred during production. Which is more valuable? There is no automatic answer. Collectors may prefer the error because it is unique and visually dramatic. Another collector may prefer the high-grade normal example because they are building a condition-focused set. The market value depends on demand, rarity, eye appeal, and the preferences of the buyers involved. This is why coin valuation is not always a simple mathematical formula. The same principle applies to varieties. A double die may be highly collectible because the doubling occurred in the die itself. But a minor form of doubling that is difficult to see may not attract the same demand as a dramatic and clearly visible doubled die. Collectors often use magnification to examine the date, lettering, and design elements. The 2004 Lincoln cent should be inspected carefully around the date and mint mark, but collectors should avoid assuming that every apparent doubling is a genuine doubled die. Machine doubling is one of the most common sources of confusion. During the striking process, the die may move slightly while contacting the planchette. This can produce a secondary image that looks like doubling. However, machine doubling is generally considered a striking anomaly rather than a true doubled die. It often has a flat, shelf-like appearance and may reduce the apparent height of the design rather than creating a distinct secondary image. A true doubled die is created earlier in the production process. The hubbing process produces the working die, and if the design is impressed more than once in slightly different positions, the resulting die can carry genuine doubling. Every coin struck by that die can potentially display the same characteristic. This distinction is extremely important because a genuine doubled die can be a collectible variety, while ordinary machine doubling usually adds little or no significant premium. The same mistake occurs with die deterioration. As dies become older, their surfaces can develop fatigue. The resulting coins may show distortions, raised areas, or unusual-looking design elements. These features can sometimes be mistaken for rare errors. For example, letters may appear swollen. Lines may become distorted. The surface may show cracks. The rim may become irregular. The design may look slightly weaker. These characteristics can be caused by die wear or deterioration rather than a rare mint error. This is why experienced collectors compare coins from the same date and mint mark. If the same unusual feature appears repeatedly on many examples, it may represent a die variety or die state. If only one coin shows an unusual feature, it may be an isolated error or post-mint damage. A major error is usually more valuable when it is visually obvious. Consider an off-center strike. If the design is shifted by only a few percent, the coin may be interesting, but not necessarily extremely valuable. If the design is shifted dramatically and a large portion of the planchette is blank, the error becomes much more noticeable. If the date and mint mark remain fully visible, the coin is easier to identify. Collectors often appreciate errors that tell their own story visually. You can look at the coin and immediately understand what went wrong. A dramatic off-center 2004 cent can therefore be more desirable than a subtle technical error that requires a microscope to recognize. The same is true of clipped planchets. A genuine clipped planchette can have a curved section missing from the coin. The missing portion should have characteristics consistent with the manufacturing process. The edge around the clip may be thinner or show a distinctive appearance caused by metal flow. This is where the Blakesley effect becomes relevant. When a portion of a planchette is missing, the metal may not fill the collar properly during striking. As a result, the rim opposite the clipped area may appear weaker. This can provide evidence that the missing section existed before the coin was struck rather than being removed afterward. However, collectors should be careful. Someone can intentionally cut a coin. Someone can damage a coin with tools. Someone can grind away part of the edge. Someone can create an artificial appearance. A professional can examine the coin for signs of genuine mint production. The more valuable the alleged error, the more important authentication becomes. One of the most exciting categories is a wrong planchette error. Imagine a 2004 Lincoln cent struck on a planchette intended for another coin. The resulting piece could have a different weight, diameter, thickness, or appearance. The design might not fit correctly on the planchette. This type of error is rare because the mint uses different planchets for different denominations, and the production process is designed to keep them separated. Nevertheless, mistakes can occur. If the wrong planchette enters the Lincoln cent production line and is struck with Lincoln cent dies, the resulting coin could be extremely interesting. But a wrong planchette claim writing a variant equals document, ID equals 31847, the deeper you go into the world of the 2004 Lincoln cent, the more you realize that the most important question is not simply how much the coin is worth, but why a particular coin might be worth more than another. Example of exactly the same date and mint mark. Millions of people see the same 2004 penny every year and never think twice about it. They drop it into a jar, spend it at a store, leave it in a car cup holder, or carry it around in a pocket. Yet collectors look at the same coin differently. They see a manufacturing process, a historical object, a potential variety, and perhaps an opportunity to discover something unusual. The 2004 Lincoln cent is part of one of the largest and longest-running coin series in American history. The Lincoln cent has been produced since 1909, and the portrait of Abraham Lincoln has remained one of the most familiar images on United States coinage. When the 2004 cent was produced, Lincoln's portrait had already appeared on American cents for nearly a century. The coin was therefore part of a tradition that connected generations of Americans. The Denver Mint, represented by the small d mint mark, played an important role in producing the nation's circulating coinage. The 2004 cent was one of billions of Lincoln cents produced during the year, and the sheer size of its mintage explains why the normal coin is not considered rare. However, large production numbers can create an interesting contradiction. The ordinary examples are common, but exceptional examples may be difficult to find. Think about a large group of coins being manufactured. Imagine billions of individual pieces moving through the minting system. Even if the majority are perfectly normal, a small number may have unusual characteristics. Some may be struck slightly off-center. Some may have die cracks. Some may have planchette problems. Some may show striking anomalies. Some may have unusual surface characteristics caused by the manufacturing process. Most of these will never become famous, but some may eventually be discovered by collectors. The difference between an ordinary 2004 cent and a collectible error can sometimes be surprisingly small. It may be a matter of millimeters. It may be a slight shift in the strike. It may be an unusual shape. It may be an unexpected weight. It may be a design element that appears doubled. The challenge is determining whether that difference is genuine. This is where the science of numismatics becomes important. Coin collecting is not simply about looking at pictures and guessing prices. Serious collectors study metal composition, weight, diameter, thickness, die characteristics, striking pressure, planchette preparation, and minting technology. They learn how coins are manufactured so they can recognize when something went wrong. A modern Lincoln cent begins its life long before it receives Lincoln's portrait. The metal used for the coin must be prepared and formed into planchets. The planchette is the blank piece of metal that will eventually become a coin. In the case of the standard 2004 cent, the planchette consists of a zinc core covered by a thin layer of copper. The copper plating gives the coin its familiar reddish appearance, while the zinc core provides the majority of the coin's mass. The standard weight is approximately 2.50 grams. This composition creates a useful clue for collectors. If you find a 2004 cent that weighs significantly more or less than expected, you may want to investigate. But weight alone is never enough to prove an error. A coin may have corrosion. It may have dirt attached to it. It may have lost some of its plating. It may have been damaged. Your scale may also be inaccurate. Therefore, the correct procedure is to combine weight with other evidence. Suppose a 2004 cent weighs significantly less than 2.50 grams. You might wonder whether it was struck on a wrong planchette. But then you examine the coin and discover that the edge has been filed. The coin may have been deliberately altered. The unusual weight is not evidence of a mint error. Now imagine another coin with an unusual weight, unusual diameter, and design that appears to fit a different denomination's planchette. The edge is consistent with a mint-produced piece, the surfaces are natural, and the coin passes professional authentication. Suddenly, you may have a genuine wrong planchette error. This illustrates a key principle: multiple pieces of evidence are stronger than one unusual characteristic. The same principle applies to possible doubled dies. If you see what looks like doubling on the date, do not immediately assume you have a valuable coin. First determine what kind of doubling you are seeing. A genuine doubled die is a variety created during the die-making process. The design is transferred to the die in a way that creates a secondary image. When the die strikes coins, the doubling appears consistently on the affected design elements. Machine doubling is different. It occurs during striking and often produces a flat, shelf-like appearance. It can make letters and numbers look distorted, but it generally does not have the same collectible significance as a true doubled die. Mechanical or strike-related doubling can also occur in other ways. This is why photographs from a smartphone are not always enough. A coin should be examined under controlled lighting and magnification. The suspected doubling should be compared with verified references. The date 2004 itself can be particularly interesting because the numerals are small and can show subtle characteristics. Collectors may examine the 2, 0, 0, and 4 for unusual separation. The D mint mark should also be studied carefully, although collectors should remember that a modern mint mark is part of the die rather than being individually punched into each finished coin, as was common with older issues. The reverse should also be examined. The Lincoln Memorial design includes numerous architectural details. The columns, steps, lettering, and surrounding fields can reveal die characteristics. A die crack may travel through a portion of the design. A struck-through error may affect the memorial. A weak strike may reduce detail in certain areas. Collectors should learn to distinguish weak striking from wear. A worn coin loses detail because it has circulated. A weakly struck coin may show missing detail even though it has never circulated. This difference can be important. If the highest points of the design are smooth because of friction, the coin may be worn. If the coin has sharp surfaces, but certain details are weak, the issue may be related to striking pressure or die condition. Again, careful observation is essential. The rim is another critical area. The rim is formed during the striking process and helps protect the design. An unusual rim can provide clues about how the coin was made. An off-center strike may show an incomplete rim. A broad strike may show an expanded rim area. A capped die may produce unusual deformation. A partial collar error may create a distinctive shape. Collectors sometimes refer to certain partial collar errors as railroad rim errors because the coin may have a raised edge resembling a railroad track. These errors can occur when a planchette is not properly seated in the collar during striking. A 2004 D cent with a genuine partial collar error could be collectible, especially if the effect is dramatic and clearly visible. However, again, damage must be ruled out. A coin can be squeezed or flattened by machinery after leaving the mint. It can become bent. It can develop an irregular edge. It can be struck by a hammer. It can be caught in industrial equipment. All of these things can create strange shapes. The question is whether the deformation has the characteristics of a minting error. Professional experts learn to recognize those characteristics. This is why error coin collecting is a specialized field. Some collectors focus exclusively on errors. They may own hundreds of unusual coins. They learn the terminology. They study auction records. They communicate with specialists. They attend coin shows. They compare discoveries. And they often develop an ability to recognize genuine errors that beginners do not have. A person who finds a strange 2004D cent can benefit from this community. Instead of immediately assuming the coin is worth $174 million, they can ask knowledgeable collectors for opinions. Writing a variant equals document, ID equals 62519. The journey of the 2004D Lincoln cent now reaches its most important stage, because after learning about the coin's history, design, weight, composition, possible errors, grading, and market value, the final question becomes simple: what should a collector actually do when they find one? The answer begins with patience. If you discover a 2004D Lincoln cent that appears unusual, do not immediately assume that you have found a fortune. At the same time, do not immediately dismiss it as worthless. The correct approach is to investigate carefully. The coin should first be identified as a genuine 2004D Lincoln cent. The date should read 2004, and the D mint mark should appear beneath the date on the obverse. The standard coin weighs approximately 2.50 grams, measures about 19 millimeters in diameter, and is made with a copper-plated zinc composition. It has a plain edge and carries the Lincoln Memorial reverse design. These basic specifications create the starting point for examination. Once the coin has been identified, the next step is to look for anything unusual. Is the coin dramatically off-center? Is there a section of the planchet missing? Does the rim look abnormal? Is the coin unusually thin or thick? Does the weight differ significantly from normal? Does the coin appear to have been struck on a different planchet? Are there genuine signs of doubling? Is there a major die crack? Is there a die break? Does the coin show evidence of a struck-through error? Could the unusual feature simply be damage? These questions can help determine whether further investigation is necessary. One of the most important lessons for collectors is that a valuable coin does not necessarily have to look spectacular at first glance. Some valuable varieties are identified by tiny details. A small difference in the design of a letter or number can be important to specialists. At the same time, the most dramatic errors are often immediately recognizable. A major off-center strike, for example, can be obvious. The entire design may be shifted dramatically, leaving a large blank area along one side of the coin. If the date and mint mark remain visible, identification becomes easier. A major clipped planchet can also be visually obvious. Part of the coin's normal circular shape may be missing. A broad strike may appear wider than a normal cent. A partial collar error may create a distinctive raised edge. A wrong planchet error may have an unusual size or weight. These are the kinds of features that can make a 2004D cent genuinely interesting. However, collectors must remember that the word error is often used incorrectly online. A scratch is not necessarily an error. A dent is not an error. A bent coin is not an error. A coin with chemical discoloration is not an error. A coin damaged by a machine after leaving the mint is not an error. A coin that has been cleaned is not an error. A coin that has been deliberately altered is not an error. The difference between a mint error and post-mint damage is fundamental. A mint error happens during the manufacturing process. Post-mint damage happens afterward. That distinction can determine whether the coin has collectible value. This is why professional authentication becomes so important when a coin appears extraordinary. A collector may believe they have discovered a rare 2004D error, but a professional examination can reveal whether the feature is genuine. This is especially important for expensive claims. The internet is full of dramatic headlines about coins worth millions of dollars. Some of these claims are based on misunderstandings, unrealistic asking prices, or exaggerated descriptions. The claim that a 2004D Lincoln cent has a current market value of $174 million should therefore be treated with extreme caution. There is no credible documented evidence establishing a $174 million sale for a standard 2004D Lincoln cent, or a recognized 2004D error. The documented market is much more realistic. The normal 2004D cent is common because billions were produced. Circulated examples are generally worth around face value. Uncirculated examples can bring premiums. High-grade certified examples can be worth considerably more. PCGS has recorded an auction result of $4,198 for a 2004D MS69 example, while another MS69 road example sold for $1,080 in 2024. These are documented transactions and demonstrate that exceptional examples can be worth substantially more than 1 cent, but they are still nowhere near $174 million. The distinction between documented value and sensational claims should always be made clear. A coin's market value comes from actual demand. If a collector wants a coin, they may pay a premium. If several collectors want the same coin, competition can push the price higher. If the coin is unique, rare, and authenticated, the demand may be stronger. But a price does not become real simply because someone writes it in an online listing. This is one of the most important lessons for anyone who wants to collect or sell coins. The number $174 million may sound impressive, but without a documented sale, it is not a confirmed market value. Collectors should therefore focus on evidence. Look at completed auction results. Check professional grading records. Research recognized varieties. Consult experienced error specialists. Compare multiple sources. And when possible, obtain independent authentication. This approach can protect you from both disappointment and financial mistakes. Imagine discovering a 2004D penny with a strange shape. You might search online and find a website claiming that similar coins are worth hundreds of thousands or millions. Before becoming excited, you should ask why. What exactly makes the coin valuable? Is the error genuine? How many examples are known? Has the coin been certified? Has a similar coin actually sold? Where is the auction record? Who is making the valuation? If the answers are unclear, the claim should be treated cautiously. The real value of a coin is often much more complicated than a headline suggests. A coin may have an unusual feature, but still be common. A coin may have a rare error, but be damaged. A coin may have a rare error, but lack collector demand. A coin may be valuable, but not worth as much as the owner expects. The market is always the final judge. For this reason, collectors should learn to separate 4 different concepts. There is face value. There is collectible value. There is asking price. And there is realized market value. The face value of the 2004D cent is 1 cent. Its collectible value depends on its characteristics. An asking price is what someone wants to receive. A realized market value is what someone actually paid. These numbers can be dramatically different. Someone might list a 2004D penny for $174 million. That does not mean it is worth $174 million. Someone might list it for $10,000. That does not mean it is worth $10,000. Someone might sell a certified high-grade example for $1,000. That is evidence of a real market transaction. Someone might sell another example for more or less. The market can change. The condition can differ. The error can differ. The buyer can differ. The auction can differ. This is why coin values should always be presented as estimates or documented sales rather than guaranteed amounts. The 2004D cent is also an excellent example of the importance of grading. Professional grading services examine coins carefully. They evaluate condition. They determine authenticity. They may attribute varieties or errors. They then encapsulate the coin in a protective holder. A high grade can significantly increase the value of a modern coin. For example, a circulated 2004 D cent may be worth 1 cent. A high-grade uncirculated coin may be worth more.